and concerns that remain in our hearts unspoken. Now the recording starts. Welcome to everyone in person today and those joining us at home. The Unitarians of Lake Norman is an open and inclusive congregation. Our members walk diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and by the responsibility to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Linda Heidenberg, and I have been an active member of this congregation since 2015. Seems like a long time ago already. Our guest speaker is Reverend Travis Smith, founder and director of Blue Ridge Hope, a mental health nonprofit that focuses on connecting individuals with resources to help them achieve their emotional goals, reconcile personal loss, and develop health and wholeness. He is passionate about removing barriers to accessing quality health services and promoting holistic, integrated care for the community. Opening words.
I'll keep my opening words brief. I believe that hope is a stubborn thing. If you don't believe me, look at the sidewalk the next time you take a walk, because you'll see a flower working its way up on the hard surface. May that same hope dwell in all of us.
Join me for the chalice sliding words, which are in your bulletin. We light this flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Now, Autumn has an announcement.
It feels a little awkward being behind. All right, so changing things up a little bit today. We just finished lighting our chalice. The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And we begin our worship every Sunday by lighting a candle cradled within a wide-lit vessel. You can also find them out in the world. We have a tapestry that hangs sometimes. We have one right here where they're represented as three-dimensional objects and also two-dimensional artistic renderings. Many people wear chalice jewelry, sometimes as a cue to prompt others to ask about Unitarian Universalism, and some as a reminder to make their actions reflect their highest values. At its most literal level of meaning, the flaming chalice signals Unitarian Universalist identity, but it has other registers of meaning as well. It suggests the transformations that take place when we are held within this religious community. And when we light the chalice in worship, we illuminate a world that we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. The flame is one of our beloved hymns terms the fire of commitment. Thus, you will see the flaming chalice on stoles and banners at demonstrations against injustice. And we also often light the chalice whenever we gather, be it at worship services or at committee meetings or board retreats. We appreciate the reminder that even the most basic work serves the larger mission. In its setting in worship, lighting the chalice signals the entry of the gathering community in a sacred space. And when I light the flame, I like to think of the thousands or more congregations doing so at the same time. This helps me enter the spirit of worship, which is intended to break down the apparent barriers of time and place so that we, the congregation, can establish larger connections to the sacred. And to all the other people of this religious liberal religious faith, who are gathering in the present and have gathered in the past and will gather in the future. Rhythms and concerns of our everyday life remain, but they come to be held in a much larger context. Many congregations extinguish their chalice at the close of worship, sometimes with a reminder that those who have gathered together now carry the warmth of human community and the light of truth with them throughout the week. The fire is not so much extinguished as born in the heart of each of us, a new expression of what Ralph Waldo Emerson called the divine spark, the manifestation of divine possibility within each human soul. So the history of the symbol of Unitarian Universalism is an interesting one, and that's what I want to share with you today. Many people are surprised to learn that lighting a chalice as part of worship only found its way into Unitarian Universalist congregations in the 1980s. But the path it took to reach the sanctuary is a very Unitarian Universalist one. The story that begins with Nazi registers and ends with children in the religious education program. Originally, the flaming chalice was a two-dimensional image stamped on documents created by the Unitarian Service Committee to help Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution on the eve of World War II. The design had been hastily put together by the artist Hans Deutsch, himself a refugee. Deutsch was working at the direction of the Unitarian Service Committee's director, Reverend Charles Joy, who believed that such a logo would make their paperwork look more official. Reverend Joy would later claim that the design was reminiscent of the lamps of holy oil used by the ancient Greeks and the Romans on their altars, and that the flame itself represented a spirit of helpfulness and sacrifice. There has always been a lack of clarity regarding Deutsch's original intentions, which were quite possibly not highly developed. Eventually, the chalice design used to dress up documents formed the basis of the American Unitarian Association's official logo. And after Unitarianism and Universalism merged in 1961, the symbol acquired two overlapping circles to represent each of the two traditions. Interestingly, we aren't sure how the chalice as a two-dimensional artistic rendering transformed itself into this three-dimensional object used in worship. All evidence, though, suggests that the path leads through our children's religious education programs. The curricula used in the late 70s stressed the meaning of the chalice and encouraged the children to make chalices in different media. Eventually, those chalices morphed into objects that can be lit on fire. The first documented uses of chalices in the main sanctuaries are from Sundays on which the children and youth led the worship and demonstrated their practice to the adult congregation. So it was a children's church craft that captured the imagination of an entire denomination. I personally enjoy the chalice's lack of predetermined meaning. One way to understand Unitarian Universalism's distinct character is to see it as an orthopraxy. Orthopraxy stresses that the most important religious bonds are formed out of justice actions and loving practice. This is in contrast with orthodoxy, which is most common in Christian traditions, which stresses correct beliefs and often homogeneous beliefs as the most important aspect of religion. The chalice has a symbol represented courageous deeds that were already taking place, as we saw in the Nazis, refugees, but it was also further honed by the children to represent the cradle of love. So in a moment, I'm going to start a new tradition that I hope to carry on. I will take the kids to their classroom, and today we'll start this tradition where we'll take along a candle that will symbolically be lit from this chalice here in the main sanctuary. It will connect our classroom, our worship, and our justice work to the worship taking place in the sanctuary. When we get to the classroom today, we'll be talking about the importance of the balance in the web of life through a Nigerian folk tale where everything becomes out of balance. And we will also be making note cards to send to the decision makers on the Earth Day vigil outside of Bank of America in Charlotte. So please visit our table in the welcome hall at the end of service to help us by filling out a note card and share your thoughts about the reduction of fossil fuel use. I would also like to invite any grown-ups who may want to worship by doing to walk along with us and even to stay a while this afternoon. So as we get ready to go, I invite Ellery, who's our youth volunteer, to come forward and transfer the flame as we all sing Spirit of Life. I printed it in the order of service, so please stand as you're willing and able.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing your heart, all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life. Shade of justice, from my close, wings set us free. Spirit of life, come to us, come to us.
I know. She changed the words. Okay. Don't stay up. It's your turn.
Oh.
Now, Mike will invite us with his music to a place of worship. That was beautiful. I just want to welcome Travis here today. He says he hasn't been here. I see some. He seems so familiar because of Zoom, but this is his first time here in Davidson, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike, also for that music. When I saw you as I came in, as I saw many of you, I only know you from Zoom, and it was fun to finally actually see you face to face And when I saw you, I said, oh, we're going to have some good music today because you always set the mood the right way. Thank you so much for that. It's good to be here in person with you. I was going to be here in January, and after 3 years, I finally got COVID. So thankfully, it was very, very mild for my wife and I. We were very thankful for that. But nonetheless, it was not safe for me to travel and be here with you all. So I'm glad today that we could remedy that and be together. Well, as you already know, I love your pastor so much. Pat, as you do, wonderful. Pat Jobe is a dear friend of mine. Pat, as you already have found out, is probably one of the most kindest, altruistic people I know. He gives of himself continually, day in and day out. So it's an honor to be in this place where he serves and to be here with you. You know, something I did a while back, I'm going to date myself, so I won't give dates right off. But a long time ago, right out of seminary, I decided that I needed a year-long residency in what's called clinical pastoral education. Is anybody familiar with that term? Ed, you are? No one else? Good. You don't want to do it. No. All joking aside, it was a wonderful experience. But what I did is I subjected myself for 1 full year of being in a hospital setting where I worked with crisis cases, and then I would come back and I would report what I said and what I did, and individuals in a group setting would kind of tear me apart. And if that wasn't good enough, we had individual supervision where they took it even a step further. And it was kind of this continual trying to get you to figure out who are you and what makes you do what you do and say what you say. And I was in one of those supervision sessions with my supervisor, and she was grilling me pretty hard. She said, Travis, what's your pastoral theology? Travis, what is your pastoral theology? Travis, what is your pastoral theology? And out of desperation, but also truth, and I think somehow some kind of divine connection, I look onto the wall, and there's this point. And I tell her, that's my pastoral theology. Let me read those words. I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior for doors, of chambers as the cedars impregnable of the eye, and for an everlasting roof, the gambrels of the sky. Of visitors, the fairest for occupation this, the spreading of my narrow hands to gather paradise. For me, I looked at that poem by Emily Dickinson and I said, that is my pastoral theology. I will choose to dwell in possibility. I will choose to dwell in possibility with people who desire what may not seem possible. I'll sit in those tough places with people where it seems like the night will never end. And I will dwell in the hope that sun will rise, that morning will come. I guess that was good enough. She left me alone after that. How could she argue? The poem was on her wall, for goodness sake. And as I continue to flesh that out, it has never left my mind. And still to this day, that's my belief when I think of how we work and act as a congregation to a world. We want to dwell in possibility. We want to care for people. We want to be in that place and stand in that gap when individuals can't stand in that gap, maybe for themselves sometimes. As you know, I operate a nonprofit mental health, as Lynn has already said, and that for me has been one of the ways I've lived out that possibility throughout my life for other people and to try to help them with that. We didn't take it lightly when we named the organization Blue Ridge Hope. Because for me, hope is more than just a noun. It's the hope as the verb too, that we know it is. Hope isn't just one thing. Hope isn't just a thing. Hope is something we do. Hope is something we live out. Or as Emily Dickinson said, it's how we dwell in possibility. I was thinking about that as I was thinking about speaking with you today. And I'm going to tell you one of the ways that I've learned for myself for hope to dwell in possibility, or to hope to be an action or a verb, is to do something toward what I want, to take some step toward what I want to see happen. One of the gifts that someone gave me many, many years ago was and it was actually your pastor, my friend Pat. He said, Travis, do you sit down and ever write down words as to what you hope for? I said, well, you don't really have it. He said, do this. He said, get up in the morning and script out your day. Write it down. Write it down into the detail of what you hope it looks like. And I began to do that. I began to get up in the morning and I began to write down, this day will blank, 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 blank. Now, of course, every day did not unfold that way, but it gave me this sense of somehow I was walking in the direction of where I wanted to go. It wasn't just a sense that I was sitting back and hoping and waiting. No, it was a sense that I was believing and walking towards something, not just waiting for it to show up. And I think that's where hope for me has shown up as a verb in my life so many times, is to do and to move and to walk and to journey toward what I desire. You know, I think about that in terms of what we do every day at Blue Ridge Hope. We walk into that space with people who are hurting. And we obviously walk into that space with people who are dealing with significant mental health struggles, other struggles in their life as well, not always related to mental health, but things that they're dealing with that are hard to manage. And we work to bring access to mental health care to these individuals who desire that. We live in a county that has 19% poverty rate. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but just think about that for a moment. Almost 20% of our population in Rutherford County lives in poverty. We're a Tier 1 county, which means for us, we're one of the poorest counties in the state. There are only a few more. When you look at that scenario, it's easy to look at that and be hopeless. It's easy to look at that scenario and believe, what could we ever do to make a difference in this situation? But that is exactly the road we walk down and walk into that situation each and every day with people. Because we believe that access to mental health care is equitable access to mental health care. We believe that's part of social justice. We believe that if we can provide quality services to individuals who are struggling and needing help, then that is part of the social justice work that we do each and every day. Because equitable access to mental health care is social justice, just like equitable access to other health care is social justice. It's what we're called to do. And we walk that road with people and we begin to have that conversation with folks to say, okay, what does it look like for you to find hope? How does hope show up in your life? Where will it be if it can be? And sometimes people can't see it, and that's okay. It's understandable. I mean, if you have lived in this world in any length of time, you know, darkness can feel as though it surrounds us completely sometimes. Sometimes darkness can feel that it surrounds us so much that we don't believe any ray of light could penetrate that. But it's our job to walk into that and to let people know that we're going to believe the light can come even if they don't. And to hold hands when we need to hold hands, to hug when it's appropriate and needs a hug, and most importantly, give quality professional mental health care to people who are in dire need of it. You know, we walk that road, as I said, and we work with people who have significant trauma. The average client who walks through our doors at Blue Ridge Hope makes $16,000 a year. That's all they make. Think about that for a moment. How would you like it to pay rent, to buy your groceries, provide your transportation, all your necessities on $16,000 a year? Could that happen here in Lake Norman, Davidson area? Could that happen? It's almost impossible as well in Rutherford County. So people walk through our door with a desire to find some help, but they're living in the pain of poverty. They're living in a place of just being broken down and torn down. But when they walk through our door, we believe that they've walked through a door of hope. You see, I think just by the fact that they step into that front door is hope as birth. Because hope is when we put that one foot in front of the other foot and we make progress toward where we want to go. And that's the kind of world I want to live in. That's the kind of world that I want to live in, is where people make those paths accessible. And they believe and help me when I can't believe or help myself sometimes. And I know that's the kind of world you want to live in too, because you do it already. I know from the stories of Pat how your hope is a verb many days, and what you do with the dog fence ministry and what you do elsewhere in this area is absolutely beautiful work. I couldn't help but notice when I came in today and I saw the pulpit or the lectern laid out. I love this. You know, this is actually hung on many UU churches outside and also on their fences and also Christian churches as well. There's United Methodist churches that have this out as well. And the first time that I ever preached in a UU church or delivered this story or talk, I was in Charleston, South Carolina. Have you ever seen the UU church in Charleston, South Carolina? Oh. So I walk in, this is the first time I've done this. So I walk into the doors of the UU church there in Charleston, and it's huge. And I look and I see this plastered across the fence, and I knew I was at home. I knew I was okay. Because see, just this right here is hope as a verb. It's doing something. It's not just waiting. It's telling folks up front, hey, I'm going to believe in you, and I love you, and I care for you. I walked into that pulpit at Unitarian Church in Charleston, and I stepped up onto that stage, and it struck me that I was about to stand in the same lectern that someone stood in at the beginning of the Civil War. I'm going to be standing behind the same lectern that somebody would have stood there in April of that year and said, we're now at war. And I began to think, what would I have said? What kind of comfort would I have offered these individuals who may not have been for that? Maybe they were. Who knows exactly? But some of them surely were. What would I say to offer comfort and hope in those days? It was interesting because that day was Christmas. It was a couple of Sundays before Christmas. And Pat Job and I did a tag team sermon where we went back and forth with each other over the comparison of Christian's birth and Jesus's birth, and it was a blast. But at the end of it, I thought to myself as I stepped down, we today delivered a message of hope that I hope rang true even hundreds of years ago. That we are in this life together. That we are in this thing together. We are not apart. As much as people might try to tell you today that we're individualistic and separate, we're not. We're all interconnected, right? We need each other. We need each other. We need a society moving in a direction that says they believe that we need each other. And we can survive by loving and caring for each other. I think that to me, that is one of the ways that hope shows itself in my life to keep moving forward. I shared with you a few minutes ago about how if you walk down the sidewalk and you notice that the concrete, all of a sudden there's a flower coming up or a dandelion. To me, every time I see that, it strikes me and it makes me laugh because I say, wow, hope is a stubborn thing. Hope doesn't give up. Hope keeps pushing forward. There's an Old Testament passage that's used in both Jewish and Christian tradition and other traditions for that matter. And it talks about out of the stump of Jesse will come redemption for Israel. And when I think about that verse, I can't help but think that's interesting. That a stump is going to produce somehow redemption or going to produce something positive. Because I grew up on a farm. I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And we grew up on a peach farm there. So we had to cut those trees back sometimes and there was nothing but that stump left. Then we would have to pull them up at times. So I've looked at a lot of stumps in my life, and I'm sure you have too. I've never seen really much good come out of a stump. Stumps are really good for about two things. One, to count the rings of the past, or to sit down on. So really about all they're good for. But what's interesting is if you leave the stump alone, sometimes a shoot will come off the stump, and something new will begin to grow. Is it exactly the same? No, it's not. It's something else. Something even more powerful, showing back up and saying that even out of death, even out of being cut down and left for nothing, new growth can come. And I think about that when hard times hit for myself. When things happen for me that I feel like I can't move forward from or I feel paralyzed from, and we've all had them, I think back to that stump. Either I can sit down on it, I can count the rings of the past and look backwards at what happened and what I hoped would happen and why it didn't happen, or I can hope and believe that there's going to be a shoot that comes off that stump that can be new and could take me somewhere better than I ever imagined. Because see, one thing I found true about this life is that sometimes the things we don't expect can lead us in the best direction. Things that I feel like have been the end of me have been the beginning of something new and something beautiful. I want to share with you a story as I close about a young girl. This young girl, to me, shows that hope is a verb as well. We'll call her Hannah. Hannah walked into our office about 4 weeks ago now. And she met with one of our counselors, and she's a 16-year-old girl. 16-year-old girl that had her life entirely in front of her to go. Hannah was smart. Hannah was interactive. Hannah was a beautiful soul. She sat down with her counselor, and unfortunately, as the story began to unfold, we realized that day that she was in a lot of darkness. And that Hannah had already decided that later that evening or the next day, she was going to take her life. But she shared that with the counselor that day. And because she shared that with our mental health counselor, we were able to put into action hope. We immediately were able to get her the help she needed. We were immediately able to call the people that we needed to call. And within an hour and 45 minutes, Hannah was in an inpatient facility. And Hannah was getting the treatment that she needed, the treatment she desired. Now, what's interesting to me is that when I looked at Hannah, I looked at someone who I thought had a bright light to shine, and she does. But she didn't feel that way in the moment. She didn't think that was true in that moment. And I began to think about Hannah, and I began to think about the work we do, and I began to realize that hope was her stepping across the threshold that day. She took the steps she needed to take. We could take care of it from there. We were going to get her what she needed from there. Hannah was back in the office last week. Hannah's now smiling, laughing, joking. That beautiful smile is on her face. And she told her counselor who meets with her, I think this might need to be our last session. I'm happy. I'm actually getting along with my family. We said, well, Hannah, give us a few more weeks. Let's make sure everything's going well, which she agreed to. But as she walked out of those doors, I thought to myself, what will Hannah do in this life? Will she come back one day and be a counselor as well? One day, will she work at Blue Ridge Hope and help individuals who are suffering? I have no clue. Well, one day, maybe she'll help somebody's light from not going out too soon and teaching them that hope is a verb and it's something you do and something you can live in. I don't know exactly. But what I do know is that this world's a little less dark because Hannah's still here. Hannah's light is still shining because hope is a stubborn thing. Hope is something that we continue to grasp and hold and push forward with, believing that in all places, in all things, in all times, hope is active. Hope is living, and hope is pushing forward. So I want to ask you today, if you'll help me with something. You don't have to do anything right now. Just think about it. If you would, this next week, would you look for a way to dwell in possibility? I don't know what that means for you, but could you look for a way to just dwell in possibility that it might, that it could, that it will happen?
Yeah. We have the talk back section.
Yes, okay. We do that standing up or sitting down? Standing up, all right.
Stand up.
Hit me with your best shot.
They get to sit down.
No, Jim, y'all stay sitting. Oh.
So we invite you to give us your reflections, and if you can, come up to the speaker.
Yeah, because you said it well. We need talk back because these 15, 20 minutes do not hold the whole together. I mean, there's so much more to it, and there's so many facets to it. So I'd love to keep that conversation going.
I love that you all have a way to open people up to the possibilities that are there for them, and that you have resources and counseling.
Thank you, Nancy. That's so true because, you know, I realize when we talk about hope and I spin it with such a positive way, not everyone feels that to be true at the moment. And that is understandable. I've been there, and maybe many of you have been there. But it's helping, if I could, for a moment, open up a little bit so some light could get in. Just enough to give some hope, just enough to give something to move them forward. And for us, many times, it's having a trained therapist who's licensed and can actually open that door a little bit and just give them, even if it's just for 40 or 30 minutes, whatever, some direction that they're loved and that there's hope. And it's not always an easy thing, for sure.
Must be very rewarding.
Yeah.
Oh,
It is rewarding. It is. Yes.
In your area of possibility, this is has nothing to do with mental health other than positive mind.
Yeah. I understand.
You mentioned stumps
Yeah.
and the assumption that stumps are worthless.
Yeah.
Well, for years and years and years, rosewood trees were harvested in Brazil
Mhm.
to make furniture, guitars, fancy staircases and houses and so forth. In 1969, it was embargoed because it was destroyed in the rainforest. So all these stumps were there. They had been cut off several feet above ground because that was the easy way to get the planks. And then someone saw the possibility and they harvested the stumps and made beautiful guitars out of them. It was harder to cut the wood, so it was the last thing done, but somebody saw it.
Still had potential, didn't it? Yeah. Wonderful. I like that. And thank you for that, to add that to part of my story here. I'm learning.
It's not original, you don't need a footnote.
Yeah. Now, George, I want to footnote you for that. I want to footnote you.
And I'm fortunate enough to own a guitar built out of that stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's gorgeous, gorgeous stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yes.
How many counselors do you have, and how are you funded?
It's a great question. Funding is fluid, meaning I can tell you right now how we're funded. That was different than last year, year before, and maybe different next year. So typically we have, we have 7 full-time counselors, and then we have Miss Allyson over there, my wife. She helps me manage everything. We have 4 part-time, so we have 7 full-time and 4 part-time. Our funding comes through private donations. Our funding comes through grants that we write for foundations that have a heart for mental health care, that have a heart to help people who are in dire need without resources. And our funding also in the last couple of years has had some success with the state budget, and we're praying that can continue. We're looking at a place right now in the state of North Carolina that Medicaid most likely is going to get expanded. We're waiting to see that happen for sure. It'll be wrapped up probably in the budget. But that's going to be a wonderful thing. But what the reality is because I advocated for Medicaid expansion big time. But what's going to happen is we're going to see much more people who have now some resources to access, but we don't have enough providers. So that's where my thoughts and energy is going right now, is how do we get providers who believe in this kind of work and want to step into this arena, because we're about to have floodgates of people who now may have access to something, but we don't have anybody to serve them.
Do you, I'm assuming that if you're getting state funding, you don't do any religious kind of camp.
Oh, no. New Blue Ridge Hope is 501(c) non-religious charity. Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to bring their own thoughts of that in, we know we're fine, but in terms of their sessions, but our counselors don't promote that.
Are your clients there strictly with mental health issues, or do they come there?
Yeah.
Or medical and whatnot?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So Jim, what he asks is all of our clients mental health based or not? So we're a 3-pronged agency. So mental health is the core. That's who we are. So that's the center part of what we do, which is the largest. We also run an after-school mentoring program for youth and middle school students. And the reason we do that is because we found that in our area, the best way to reach individuals around mental health care sometimes is to get the stigma taken away from it. So we thought if we met these kids where they are at this point in their life and we helped them realize there's resources for them, that when that time came, they would know they could turn to us for extra help. Because what happens a lot is we hear people say, we didn't know what we could do, we didn't know what to do. So we ingrain in our mentoring programs with adolescents and teens a very strong component of helping them know what resources are available to them. So that's the second thing that we do. The third thing we do is elder care. So we work with a lot of aging adults around caregiver stress. So offering counseling for caregiver stress, helping trying to connect them with resources to get some relief. So those are the three big things Blue Ridge Hope does. We're not able to offer any physical health care yet in terms of like a physician or PA. We don't have that at this point, but we know where to send individuals who need that. So sometimes we get those referrals.
I just think one of the biggest problems is that we don't have the places for people to go. We were in a conversation the other day about approximately 60 years ago, all the asylums were taken away. And you hear police lament that they're often called to treat people who really need mental health, treatment of help, rather than policing.
Correct. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think one of the things I would love to see is police forces funded enough so a social worker could go out on calls, someone who's trained in mental health, who could maybe intercede and work in some of these situations that really are mental health related, not criminal related. In the state of North Carolina, probably around 2000, I'm guessing that's the years, 2001, our mental health system is pretty much dismantled, and we've not recovered from it. That's part of the epidemic and problem.
Sort of follow up on what we're talking. But a lot of the people who are homeless have mental health issues, but there's nowhere to put themselves.
Oh,
Put them in jail.
Absolutely.
What could be wrong with that?
Absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, so many our folks who are unhoused many times may have a significant mental health crisis that they're in the middle of. And that's part of the unhousing situation. They're dealing with this exasperation. And if we start to criminalize homelessness, then, we start putting those people in jail, and that's not what they need. They really need some type of treatment. Sometimes getting folks to be willing to go to that treatment is not easy. But it's part of the problem. Yeah, good questions. Yeah.
How do you deal with substance abuse?
Yeah, so we have two, what we call LCAS, which is licensed clinical addiction specialists. And they try to help individuals who are seeking help around substance issues, whatever that might mean for them. We don't do a ton of that because we only have two, but we do as much as we can for those individuals. That in itself is the best way. That is a hard tiger to tame, when it comes to substance abuse. But the folks that we have doing that have got a heart for it, and they've been doing it a long time. And if somebody is wanting to make a change and willing to take the steps of hope, if they're willing to take those few steps, we've got some people that can really make a difference for them. But that's a tough road.
So interconnected.
What's that?
It's so interconnected.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no question. And so what we found out too, years ago, we would think, somebody's in an addiction situation or they're addicted to a substance. What we began to realize is that most, not all, but most individuals turn to substance due to trauma. I mean, they have a traumatic experience in some ways, and the newer research is showing that is that you can almost link addiction back, again, not always, but many times back to a trauma experience. We're getting a little more wise to that now than we probably were 30 years ago, 20 years ago.
Do you have any 12-step programs?
No, it's fine, yeah.
The 12-step programs within your...
We don't have them within our organization, but we know where they are, so we tell people they can go there. Yeah. Yeah, we do encourage them to go to a 12-step program if that's something that they want to experience. Some people don't always have the best experiences, so it can be varied. Sometimes it's for the family too, something like Al-9, which is 12 steps for family members, people who have substance abuse problems or any addictions for that matter, can find value in that too. Yeah. So we know where to send them. some days I wake up and I think, whew, there's more needs than I can plug holes in, plug the holes for. And we do what we can with what we've got, and then we try to partner with people that are doing the other work.
Did you start this organization or did you step into it?
No, I started it. Yeah, I started it in 2014. And what it began as was just grief counseling, because that's what I knew. That was my area. And what had happened in 2014 is there was the hospice Medicare benefit was beginning to get tighter for hospices, so they were having to cut some of their bereavement work. And that's where I had spent a lot of my career. And I thought, well, maybe there's a way to go start this and on its side and raise enough money to keep this going so that these services are being given to bereaved people without the Medicare benefit always having to be the answer. So that's how it began. What happened is I quickly realized that mental health needs in our community were far outpacing grief and loss. And I knew then, okay, we've got to find the right people to plug in here so that we can meet this need from a bigger direction. But that's how it began.
Okay,
Great questions.
thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm so glad I got to see you in person.
Yeah, yeah.
And if there's anything left of me after I've sweated it out, this is a good weight loss program for me. I might come back each week.
We'd love to have you come back. Yeah. Mike will now give us a beautiful song.
High expectations. Oh, a little bit here, a little bit there, you can never know if it'll lie, if it'll fly somewhere on this road. Maybe today, maybe tonight, maybe you let it go. Over the world, straight to the hearts, somewhere on this road. Oh, everyone here, everyone there, checking the stars above, looking for light, looking for love, somewhere on this road. Maybe today, maybe tonight, maybe you let it flow. Over the world, straight to the hearts, somewhere on this road. The wheels gonna spin, the chips gonna fall, the waters will overflow. Rivers of light, rivers of love, somewhere on this road. Oh, everyone here, everyone there, checking the stars above, looking for light, looking for love, somewhere on this road. Maybe today, maybe tonight, maybe you let it go. Over the world, straight to the hearts, somewhere on this road. Link in the chain, a wink in the rainbow, let your arrow go. Over the world, straight to the hearts, somewhere on this road.
Is that a Mike original?
It is a Mike original.
A Mike original, wow. We're so fortunate to have him. Thank you, Mike and Travis, for being here. This fellowship is important to us, and the contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation and to reach out to our community, both nearby and the larger world. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. Announcements. Look in your program. The auction is, yes?
I was just gonna say that the fence bill is April 29th, not May 29th.
Oh, okay. Fence bill, he's got the wrong date.
Yeah,
It's 29th. That's the day of the auction.
It's only for one dog, it should take about an hour and a half.
Yeah, you'll be still, okay, the auction's coming up in 2 weeks. Hope you all,
We have Kara and her mother Cindy made the sun catchers here. We don't have a lot of sun today, but if we did, they would be sparkling, but they will be at the auction as an item. So, and the bidding catalogs are out front, so make sure you pick one up.
okay, the bidding catalogs are here and online. So I hope you all can make it. Also, the social suppers who are going out to McAllister's, anybody like to join us, let me know so I know how big a table to get. McAllister's is a nice big, it's in Cornelius, and it's a big deli kind of place. Any other announcements that's okay. Closing song, every time I feel the spirit moving in my soul.
It's 208. 208. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Upon the mountain, my God spoke. Over the mountain, fire and smoke. All around me looks to shine. As my God, all was mine. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Jordan runs right cold, chills the body, not the soul. In but one train on this track, rocks to heaven and right back. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the spirit moving in my heart, I will pray.
Good, thank you. Okay. Closing words, Mr. Travis.
For our closing words, may we remember the poem by Emily Dickinson, To Dwell in Possibility. And I hope as you go out from this place, and as you go out from these doors, no matter what you face, no matter what you endure, know that you have love. And that love is here in this place, and love is also in your heart. And if that isn't hope, I don't know what it is.
Amen.
Oh, Chalice closing words are not on this paper, they're in here. So join me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Good. Go in peace. I've got to leave it on.